Barcelona is too dark and Fiji seems to be a little light. So what I'm gonna do is I'm put it in the area where you feel that area might turn gray after the makeup. So I'm going to use these Kleenowipe today. These are really good, even though they are kind of just made for cleansing, but I do use them to get rid of any sort of fallout from the eyeshadow that I have. And you simply just want to kind of rub it in. So now when I'm cleaning her eye, please see that I'm using my nail inside this wipe, and once my client looks up, I am kind of doing this kind of a sweep, which will give me a very, very clean line for my winged eyeliner. Right. And like so, you stretch the skin. You see how I'm stretching the skin with this other hand, and I am trying to clean with a lot of precision so that you can get that sharp effect. So once that's done, we can start with her base. So my model today has a little bit of combination skin at the moment, otherwise it's mostly dry. So for skin that's slightly on the drier side, I like to use a moisturizer. So this is the one that I'm going to use. This is called Embryolisse, and it is a dermatologically tested moisturizer, works for most of the skin, like all skin types, and I like to use it even sometimes for oily skin clients. I do have to moisturize their face, and if I'm not using a gel-based or a water-based moisturizer, I do tend to use Embryolisse. It works perfectly fine. It's just that the quantity you need to adjust depending on how dry or how moist the skin is. So that's the quantity that I'm going to use for Deviana today. Also, I'm not using an eye cream separately. I'm simply using Embryolisse under her eyes as well. Embryolisse is actually really good, and if you don't want, you don't really need to use an eye cream separately. But if you do feel that your client's under eye is extra dry as compared to their skin, you might want to use an eye cream underneath. There you go. And whatever is left, I'm just gonna kind of put it on her neck. At this moment, I am going to take another primer. This particular one, so this is by Smashbox, the original Photo Finish Smooth and Blur. It does help in blurring and smoothing, as it says, and helps with the texture. So I'm just taking a little bit. You can see what I've taken, and I'm simply just using it on her forehead and nose. I'm not going to use it on her face, on the full face I meant, just to smooth out any area that I feel is not smooth enough. Now I'm gonna be basically color correcting a little bit. So as you can see, there's not a lot of dark circles or any sort of pigmentation around the mouth or anywhere on the face that needs to be concealed. However, there is a little bit of color that you can see on her upper lip, especially under her eyes as well. So this area needs to be brightened separately, but I like to color correct it a little bit. This is the Derma color Camouflage Cream. So this is shade D30 here. So I'm kind of just like creaming it up, because it when it comes, it's not that soft. So you want to soften it on your brush just like that, and then put it in the area where you feel that area might turn gray after the makeup. So again, creaming it up, going under her eyes. I don't want to place the product too close to her lash line, to her bottom lash line. So I'm just placing the product right here. And on the other side, could you turn my way please a little bit? So again, this sponge that I'm using is by Real Techniques, and I'm simply dabbing it. So just taking a little bit more because I was not 100% sure whether I've covered this particular eye properly. So I'm just doing a little bit more and then using my sponge to spread the product out properly. All right, next we're going to do the foundation. Now for foundation, I'm going to show you today how you can mix two colors to achieve the client's color. But let me just first start with this particular one. So this one is by Nars. It's their Sheer Glow foundation and this is in shade Fiji. It seems like that this particular shade is fine for her, but we can add a little bit, a tinge of a darker color to kind of, you know, make it her exact shade. And then I'm using the second color, which is Nars Sheer Glow again, but this is the shade Barcelona. And you can see how Barcelona is too dark and Fiji seems to be a little light. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix the two together. So I'm gonna take a little bit of both, but I'm gonna take more Fiji than Barcelona. So you can see right here, this is Fiji and this is Barcelona. I've taken more Fiji than Barcelona. I'm gonna mix them up and that should be her exact shade. So if you don't particularly want to mix, you don't really have to. You can kind of take a little bit of both and then start the application of the foundation. The brush that I'm using is Bobbi Brown full coverage foundation brush, and as you can see that I'm using dabbing motions. I do not like to sweep and disrupt the layers underneath, so I generally prefer to dab the foundation in. It also kind of ensures that the product is being pushed into my client's skin and will not just sit on top. So you can see the color. I have not tried to brighten her out a lot, neither have I tried to make her look tanner. I am trying to kind of keep the color of the foundation and the skin as close together, like as similar as possible. And whatever is on your brush, you always just drag it down onto the neck. All right, and now I'm gonna use my small foundation brush. This is again by Bobbi Brown. It's their full coverage brush. And I'm just simply trying to go over this area. I don't want the difference on the forehead and the scalp to show. Next, I'm gonna be using a concealer. So the concealer that I'm gonna use for my model today is shade Natural and Porcelain. I want to try both and see which one works for them. So this is the one that I'm gonna use, the LA Pro Color HD High Definition Concealers. So this one's shade Natural, which is a shade deeper than Porcelain. I'm gonna start with the shade Natural and see if it works for me. If not, then I will brighten with the shade Porcelain. I'm gonna just take a little bit and see if this color actually works for her. I think it does, but we can add a little bit of Porcelain to it. Not too much, just a little bit. So I'm taking a little bit of this, adding a little bit of Natural to it. So this is Porcelain and Natural mixed together. And again, the way my model has stretched her skin, if your client stretches their skin, it does help. I'm gonna try to cover the area. So this is a slightly thicker layer than I like. I just kind of picked it by mistake. And I'm just kind of putting it on the bridge of her nose, a little bit in the center of her forehead so that I can brighten this area slightly. And then whatever is left on my brush, because I put a thick layer on it, so I think I have enough on my brush, I am going to go over her under eye. Of course, I'm going to use a smaller brush to kind of go close to her under eye. I don't want to use this bigger brush, But for that, I'll have to change my brush. So whatever I want to do with my big brush, first I want to do that. So instead of doing 3 layers around her mouth and under her eyes, I have done 2, which is just the color corrector and the concealer and the foundation for the rest of the face. So I did not apply any sort of foundation on the area where I had put a color corrector. And this is the time, so whatever concealers you have left, if let's say you're not going to use it, this is the one that can go on the back as well. This one is by Morphe. This is a fluffy brush and it's in the same set, which is Morphe Eye Credible brush set number 702. So I'm again mixing the two and going under her eyes. I am not using any sort of sweeping motions. I'm only dabbing. So that's one thing you want to make sure you do. And I'm not going very close to her lash line again, as I believe that when I use the blender to blend things out, this will go up till her lash line and will cover all those areas. And now I'm gonna simply just use a sponge. So this is one from Real Techniques, and it's very soft and nice, and I do dampen it a little bit before using it. So if you want, you can put it under running water, squeeze out all the water. You don't want any water at all on your sponge, because if there is water on your sponge, it will dilute your foundation and concealer and play with their coverage. So you don't want the coverage to be taken away by the sponge. All the sponge has to do is it has to make sure that there's no blotch of product that is left on the skin, and it should absorb anything extra that's there sitting on your skin, but it's not supposed to dilute any sort of your foundations or your concealers or take away from their coverage. So as you can see, I'm not going under her eyes as yet. Now, once I'm kind of done with the face, I want to go under her eyes. So I'm going to ask my client to look up and try to be a little extra careful when I'm working under the eyes. So you can see, you can use these kind of circular motions and dab a little bit. Again, if you don't want, you don't have to go very close to the liner that we've kind of marked. I've already overlapped a little bit, but if you want, you can leave that area, because anyway we'll be putting a little bit of shadow under her eyes, which will cover this particular area, even if this concealer does not. You can press your lips, please. Yeah. And if I ever feel that there's a little bit of a place where my sponge is not going, then you can use your foundation brush to cover that area. All right, so we've covered the color corrector fully. There's no orange or peach that can be seen under her eyes, around the mouth, and that's what we want to do after we've completed our cream products. Now what we want to do is I want to quickly sculpt her face a little bit with a cream product.